everybody, I'm Maritza Barone, and this is the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. Has there ever been a moment in your life where you heard or read or were told something that you simply could not unhear? Something that caused you to make positive changes so that you could become the best version of yourself? Well, we share this show with access to inspiring and empowering humans who will motivate you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate you. Sit back, settle in, and let this be the day you hear something that simply cannot be unheard. Hi all, welcome back to Things You Can't Unhear. I am thrilled to have you here with us on this very special episode with Alexx Stuart. If you are starting to question things at the moment and looking to get conscious about what you or your loved ones are consuming, this episode will be an eye-opener for you. I invited Alexx to the show. She's the founder of a movement and platform called Low Tox Life, in which she reveals with transparency what is contained in many of the items we have in our food and lifestyle products. Alexx has written books, run courses, and has launched podcasts on this topic, which she's so passionate about, in order to help others to put the spotlight on what they buy and what they use. If this is something new to you, or if you simply need a reminder on becoming a conscious consumer, Alexx delivers this information in a way that is non-judgemental and non-overwhelming and non-guilt or fear-based, because some of us can happen to feel the guilt if we learn later on what we have used over the last decades has been filled with ingredients we had no idea about. We talk about chemicals in our food and water. We talk about first steps to live cleaner and more sustainably. We talk about mold issues and illnesses, toxic thinking, and so much more. So do not delay on this one. Click play and let me know what you think on our Instagram page at Things You Can't Unhear. There's going to be a discount code in the show notes for her new course coming up with Benefit Pocket if you want to learn more, and lots of other information. Alexx Stuart, welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to it.
Now, you've got this beautiful green plant behind me and these amazing looking tulips.
I know, aren't they incredible? I treated myself to them last week.
Oh, they're gorgeous. Yep, love a bit of fresh greenery and florals in your house. Just makes all the difference to your mood. And so where are you joining us from? Where do you live, Alexx?
I'm in Sydney, in Australia.
Yep, lovely. Born and raised?
No, not at all. London born, French Mauritian mum, British dad, lived in Chicago for a few years, London for a couple of years, and then moved here when I was a little girl around 6.
Yeah.
So I'd moved around a lot by that time. And but I've been a Sydney sider ever since. And I think it's just such an incredible town. And if you find a way to do village life in Sydney, wherever you live, it can actually be a really relaxing I know a lot of people think, oh, I've got to leave the city, and I get that. But I don't share that same feeling. I actually love the city, and I've found a way to do it in a way that's not intense and hard and always in traffic.
I've got that city girl deep within me as well. And I've just moved to the Sunshine Coast. But the thing that sort of calms me down is that I know the city's not very far away. So,
yeah,
when
you jump in the car.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm spending a lot of time on beaches, and I'm used to spending a lot of time around big buildings and lots of people. And it's just readjusting to the lifestyle and seeing, how I am affected by what's around me. It's nice to have that difference. So I want to talk about your amazing work with low tox living and low tox lifestyles, and the books and the podcasts and all of the material that you give out to the world, and that helps people to really be conscious about what we're putting on our bodies and in our bodies and what we're consuming from day to day. And so for those who don't know your background story, I'd love for you to share a little bit about why you are so passionate about this and what sort of sparked you on your journey to go, hang on a minute, I'm going to really make sure I know what I am consuming before I consume it. And in doing the research on you, and I've been following your work for a long time and had you on our Conscious Conversations panel, but in redoing the research on you, I've just started becoming so conscious again of what I'm consuming and giving my family.
Yeah, I think for me, it was definitely an aha moment through a personal health challenge. And this happens a lot for people. It's usually some big phase in your life, whether you've just had a baby or you've had some recurring health issues that don't seem to be able to be fixed by any conventional means. Or maybe you just had something really scary, like a medical crisis. These tend to be either in yourself or a relative. And these tend to be the issues that make us wake up and look at things in a different way, or search for a new meaning, or maybe a new way of doing things. And for me, that was when I became antibiotic resistant to the drugs that kill tonsillitis. I was on the third round of the strongest possible ones you could take, and it just was not doing a thing. And that was quite scary, I guess, because I had always thought that you could go to the doctor, take the pills, get sorted, and feel good for a few months. I would get tonsillitis like 3 or 4 times a year. So having taken that much antibiotics, I don't even want to think about what that did to my microbiome, but I found a naturopath through a girlfriend, who then taught me that you could actually take herbs, immune support, that certain people were quite deficient in immune supportive, crucial nutrients like zinc, especially those of us in Australia. We have very zinc depleted soil. Most people are low in zinc. And if you think about what it means to have a healthy immune system today, as we're talking about living through pandemic times, like that can be really important to know about yourself. And as soon as we corrected those things in me, I was well. And unfortunately, then, of course, got tonsillitis, as I would. Every sort of 3 or 4 months, I got it again. And she had done some research between non-celiac gluten sensitivity and strep bugs, and how it can feed an overgrowth to eat gluten. And it was worth a try. What harm could be done? Of course, that was absolutely terrifying to me as a 28-year-old busy hospitality professional who would quite often drink those everything in a pop of things for breakfast or a snack. I ate good food as well, whole food, but it wasn't really something that I had identified was necessary. For me, it was more about just meals and filling up, which is so often the food conversation for most of us, unless we think a bit more big picture about things. So I went gluten-free, and in that process had to become really good at looking at labels. And 18 years ago, looking at a food label, there were so many different ways gluten could be hidden in a label. Hydrolyzed vegetable protein, like what would that make you think that gluten might, which is just crazy minefield of having to read these labels, realizing there was nothing in packaged food, barely anything that I could eat. And then, of course, realizing also what was in those things that wasn't gluten maybe, but was also pretty terrible, like petroleum-based food coloring, genetically modified based sweeteners like sugar beet, a lot of vegetable oils, which come from big monocropping agriculture situations that aren't so great for the soil and for the planet, but also not so great for us in terms of inflammation. So all these things, like I was just kind of having aha after aha, exponential learning curve. And it threw me into the arms of the exterior of the supermarket. I was still very much a supermarket shopper then. And so I really just started eating fruit, veg, nuts, seeds, dairy, meat, fish, eggs, anything that didn't have a label that you had to try and decipher something from. But then, of course, especially as I then a few years later fell pregnant and was having my bubba, I started to become a bit more discerning about even that, where it was coming from, how animals were being cared for. Factory farming and live export just broke my heart when I learned about those things. And then I questioned, trying to go vegetarian for me just was an absolute disaster. So how do you do ethical omnivorism? And I was amazed that you could find these incredible farmers doing great things. So it was really just, for food for me was this beautiful ongoing journey of peeling back the layers. But the personal care and cleaning came very much when I had my son. And that was like a big radar of this perfect, pristine little body. And I'm going to question everything I put on it and do. And then that's when I started to find things like carcinogenic ingredients in cleaning products and even in personal care, sometimes like sunscreens. And then this new style of chemical that I had never heard of before at the time, but it was an endocrine disruptive chemical group. So chemicals that were used, and chemicals aren't all bad. That's why I say chemical free is the most ridiculous term ever, because, you know, you're drinking water, you're like, the microphone I'm using for this was made of all sorts of different chemicals. It's not hurting me. It's fine. So there are plenty of chemicals that are safe. But there are many that are not, unfortunately. And it's really about becoming a more discerning consumer, I found, and being able to identify these sorts of things on labels without going insane and, feeling guilty all the time or ashamed all the time or bad if you had to resort to one of those meal poppers or, an IV in a hospital that has endocrine disruptive plastics. Like, there are so many situations where you just have to go with the flow for your own mental health and that real 80-20 kind of vibe. And so I was starting to understand things really clearly, but also from a psychological perspective, because I'd always been a teacher, trainer, motivator, really interested in how people create change in their lives across, by then, 2 different industries. And I wondered what that could look like if I moved into teaching, training, motivating people in this space. And it was really, really important to me to not make things absolute, to not start a black and white conversation where everything here is good, everything there's evil. If you do any of those things, you're silly, stupid, all the name calling we hear today just terrifies me about where that's headed. But I really felt that I had something to offer to just help people navigate these tricky spaces. Having to go gluten-free in a time where there were no gluten-free substitutes taught me how to cook. Really, that I attribute that to actually becoming a great cook, because I had to learn how to make things delicious for myself. And in doing that, of course, I connected to nature more with whole ingredients rather than packaged foods flown around the world with long life ingredients and a whole bunch of additives. So long story short, I guess, is it happened in waves, mostly at the start with my own health, then in having a baby. And every parent out there will know that your discernment level goes way, way high when you do that. And then leading to using my education skills to help others.
Well, you definitely followed the breadcrumbs for what was left for you to follow the pathway to purpose here, right?
Exactly. And that's all we can do. Like, if you think there's something in it, then there probably is. Yeah. And you probably do have to do that thing.
Agreed. And like, when you talk, then there were so many questions that I had and about, putting the conscious spotlight onto our lives and what we're consuming. And then the overwhelm hits as well. And you talked about this briefly, the overwhelm and the guilt, because once you start doing the research into what you've been consuming, you realize you've been probably doing the wrong things for you for quite some time and not sort of putting that spotlight on early enough. And then looking at my daughter, for example, had chronic tonsillitis just like you for years and years and years. And I gave her so many rounds of antibiotics just like you, because I had no idea what else to do.
Yeah.
And then we ended up getting her tonsils removed and adenoids removed. And then she still got tonsillitis. And then I ended up just taking her to a chiropractor, and it was adjustments that helped her, just chiropractic adjustments that helped her with the infection that would ease the next day after the chiropractic adjustment. So, looking at other avenues when things get really tough within your health is definitely a catalyst for a lot of people. But for those who, haven't explored this world before and going, okay, how am I going to detoxify my life, even read a label? Like, where do people begin in this journey? I mean, I've just looked through my pantry and I'm doing this slow integration at the moment. I'm getting rid of one thing and then putting it into a glass jar so that the kids don't know the difference, and just labeling it sugar when it's not actually sugar. It's a sugar alternative, and they can, continue their baking, but with healthier ingredients. So where do people even, I mean, you've got all these tools, you've got these books, but where do we look at starting when we want to educate ourselves around what chemicals are in our produce?
Yeah, and it's tricky these days, right? Because often when you start to question things, that used to be that you would just quite easily find the truth, but a lot of politicization of truth has now led people onto really questionable websites with awful backgrounds and origins, and people saying that searching for the truth, uncovering the truth, and then you find out they've never been to university, or, that's not a judgment of people who don't go to uni. I'm just saying that if we are going to try and find what's really wrong and separate it from what's definitely not right, and then right and truthful, I think our sources are critical. And that's why I chose to be someone who interviewed everyone at either health professional, PhD level, environmental scientists, toxicologists, professors of all sorts of different sciences and medical fields, because I think it's so important that we really do focus on what is factually correct. And in a time where everything is just thrown up into the air in terms of whether it's correct or not. So that for me is paramount. And like one of my favorite tips is to just like look at anything that you see shared, or like, does it sound really sensationalized or super emotional? Does it sound like someone's totally denigrating or trashing the crap out of somebody using a whole bunch of name calling? That kind of stuff I would like really just take a little step away from, and find things like, I love searching for toxicology studies. I know that sounds really nerdy, but if you're on a label, you can see an ingredient, you can think, oh, what is that? And then just type it into Google, or Ecosia is my favorite search engine, because then we can plant trees, and type the chemical name and type the word study. And then you'll see, what comes up with that. Like, is it damaging? Is it dangerous? Now, I've done this for 18 years. And when I first started, I actually had to do it in books as well. It was there was so little online. But I guess that's why people go, oh, please, has someone not figured this out for us? And I wrote books, and I've got podcasts, and I've got everything on the website. And then, of course, amazing courses like the one that I've just collaborated with Benefit Pocket on, which for me is like the ultimate beginner's easy step-by-step situation for people who feel really overwhelmed before they even begin. If they're like, that all just sounds too hard, then finding a really good beginner's course is critical.
Yeah, well, because I think the reality is that people aren't going to be jumping onto Google and putting these things in when they're time.
Exactly. But I guess I share that to say it is really hard to find factual information these days.
Yeah, exactly.
Any man and his dog can put something on the internet.
We're in an information wonderland, aren't we? Where we've got so much information, but now we have to figure out which is true and which is right.
Exactly. So it's become even harder. Books in the library was way easier, trust me, because, you have to go through so many vetting processes to get to having a book in the first place.
Well, like you said, I mean, you're now a trusted source for us. You've done the hard yards. You've done, 20 years of hard yards and doing all of these Google searches, and you've written the books, and you've got all the information, and you're doing the courses, just like the Benefit Pocket one that you just mentioned. And this is great. This is why I've got you on here too, so people can have this trusted voice and say, I don't need to do all of that research, because Alexx has done it for us, and she's a trusted source, and you're speaking from experience, and you're doing it for yourself and your family, and you're seeing the results. So this is great. I want to dig into things that are really going to help us in our day-to-day lives, and help us to make that that quick initial clean sweep of our house.
Totally. Yeah. Do you want me to do like a couple of like top 2 food concepts and top 2 like personal care and cleaning products?
Big nodding yes from me.
Yeah. Okay. So with food, I think the easiest thing for us all to do is to start thinking produce, like fresh food, and not products.
Yes.
That's honestly, if you just did one conceptual thing to focus on, it would be that, because right now doing that solves so many problems, everything from diet related disease right through to plastics and petroleum reliance, right through to soil health and planet health and carbon emissions. Like,
That's
it's
so true. Yep.
such a massive one, because you go from packaging to transport to all the things that come with packaged foods.
Yep.
Then to the additives, extra sugar, extra fat, extra salt, extra vegetable oils. And you get all of that out and you move to produce. I mean, like, it's just so exciting to me how simple it is.
I said to my husband yesterday, wouldn't it be great, because we have a fruit and veg market that's amazing up the road from here. And I said, wouldn't it be great if we just got to the point where we only shopped here and we didn't have to go to the supermarket?
Yeah.
Which, you know, you do.
And you can. And well, I find I probably go to the supermarket once or twice a month for about 4 or 5 items now. But that is a long journey. Okay. So anyone who's new to this, anyone who still fills the trolley with like a ton of packaged things because they think, oh my gosh, I've got to get like tons of snacks for the kids. You're not a bad person. It is so culturally normal to be where you are right now.
Yep.
It's one of the hardest things we can do, to step outside of cultural norms and do something different from the crew, from everyone around us.
Yeah.
So that takes time. And so that's why, I mean, like, if you just embrace the concept of moving from that to that, and then you make a start, you think, I wonder if I could get really good at one lunchbox bar recipe that I just made over and over again. And sometimes I put dried fruits and sometimes I put chopped chips, so the kids get a bit of variety. Sometimes I do cinnamon, sometimes I do vanilla, so the taste is a bit more variety. Change the nuts up, change the seeds, yada, yada. And I have found for people these adaptable kind of recipes that you can springboard from, which I've got in my second book on food, really help people develop confidence, because a lot of people go into Whole Foods and then they think they've got to be chefs and make something brilliant and creative and new and cook from recipe books every single day of the week. I'm sorry, but I'm a busy parent with 2 businesses. There's no chance in heck that I'm doing something different every day of the week. Yep. I morph things, I turn one thing into something else the next day. And so just start small. You know, I think adaptable recipes are great, where you can like make a pie, but then turn it into a chicken pie one day, mushroom and lentil the next day, and start to learn how to substitute like for like ingredients. And then it's not so overwhelming. And then when it comes to, you know, people are like, but then shouldn't I be buying organic as well? And it's like, yeah, ideally, like, there's perfect world. And then there's this big journey we're making from totally conventional living, convenience driven cultural norms, through to, you know, finding a biodynamic supplier close by. That's a big jump. So maybe just, if you guys drink a truckload of milk in your family, or you go through a ton of apples, just pick a couple of really high volume items and switch those just for now. That's it. That's all you need to do.
Okay.
And then things feel comfy, and then you make a bit more progress. So I think that's really important. And then my second one is around waste, because we're still wasting 1 in 5 shopping bags in Australia. I mean, that's crazy. We say we can't afford organics, but 20% of our shopping is tied up in stuff that goes either into the compost or worm farm, or in the bin, which is the worst. And just say to yourself, what do I need to use up first, instead of what do I fancy? So I could look in my fridge right now and think, oh, actually, no, I fancy a pan-fried chicken breast salad today. Or I could say, but we've got that seafood chowder that we made yesterday. It's got to be eaten today. Otherwise, that has to go. That's what I'm having, you know. And I mean, how ungrateful to be a society these days. Like, our World War II generation grandparents would be absolutely appalled at this what do I fancy culture of just anything, anytime, dial it in with Uber Eats. I mean, it's horrible.
Yeah, it's true. We're definitely all guilty of that.
We are. Yeah. And so really just asking yourself, at least 5 days of the week, what do I need to use up first? We'll get you using those soggy herbs and chopping them into a casserole before they go bad. It'll get you using up the half beetroot into a salad that was kind of starting to go a bit soft and needed to get used up. It'll make sure that you eat your leftovers for lunch through the school meals, or you know, if you work from home or if you're a stay-at-home parent, or send it to the person who goes into the office, like chuck it in a takeaway and container and heat it up at work. And that in itself saves you so much money and actually saves the planet. And I can tell you how exactly. It is that waste, if it was a country, would be the third largest emitter in the world behind China and the US. That's how significant it is to saving the planet. Just eating up what you need to eat up before you ask yourself what you fancy. Yeah. Amazing. And that's just so powerful. We can all do that today.
Yeah, you've inspired me. I'm going to do that tonight and make sure that I have. I think there's going to be a lot of aha moments, inspiration moments from listening to the rest of this discussion as well for all of us. No, so they're the 2 tips at the shop.
Food.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And then what were your other 2 tips for lifestyle?
So cleaning products, I would say just get rid of the fabric softener. It is poisonous to your indoor air, and it is poisonous to your skin through your clothes and then your lungs, because the way they make those fabric softeners smell so strong. And I don't know if you've ever, like, we don't use fabric softener, but every now and then we'll have a family who's got a boy a couple of years older than ours give us a bag of clothes. Yeah. And I'll be like, whoa, that's some intense smelling synthetic fragrance we've got happening here. And then I'll try and wash it, and then I'll try and wash it again, and it sticks and it sticks and it sticks. Almost impossible to get out. And the chemicals that are used to create that long-lasting fragrance are plasticizer chemicals called phthalates, PHTHALATES, for the nerds who love making notes like me and looking it up later. And these are extremely damaging to our endocrine systems, either blocking or mimicking estrogen. And that is especially damaging to boys and men. And a lot of guys let the chicks go on these low tox journeys and do all their things, but they kind of still keep using the really intense perfumed Lynx and Rexona type sprays. And they want their clothes to smell like that stuff because to them it registers as clean. But I find when you share with them that sperm health is at risk if you continue to use these synthetically fragranced products, boom, the eyes like go, what? No one's coming after my little guys. What do I need to change? And that gets the boys in the conversation as well. So that for me, and then any synthetic smelling, like, you know, for me, the lifestyle point that extends from that is your scented candles, plug-in air fresheners, fresh air systems that people kind of affix on a wall and it kind of goes, psh, you know, those timed things that happen in public bathrooms, but we can buy them for home now as well. They are all total disasters for our hormones, total disasters for our kids who are developing hormones in the teen years, who haven't even had the chance to have a baby yet. And we know, unfortunately, that fertility is going down the toilet. And it's such an easy swap. Once you just say to yourself, wow, I actually don't need fabric softeners, scented candles. I don't need any of that stuff. Again, you end up saving a ton of money, ton of plastics, ton of emissions, and you save your health. And we see this time and again when we make these changes that it's not just us who benefits. It's a whole system benefit to the entire world. And that for me, you know, so many of us feel powerless right now. There's crisis this and flood that. And it's awful when you feel like you can't do anything. But these things do things, these little things that we do in the day. So that's a huge lifestyle one, to really start removing those synthetic fragrances. And if you love soft clothes, just chuck a half cup of bicarb soda, put in a few like drops of lemon oil or eucalyptus oil, lavender oil, whatever you like the smell of, into the bicarb, like 10 to 20, and then put that into your wash. And it's a beautiful, gentle fabric softener that doesn't stink out the house.
Thank you. I needed an alternative because I feel like
we all do. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it's important. I feel like, we need to know what we can replace these things with if we feel as though we need them, because otherwise you just end up hearing this and then slowly over over time you revert back because your towels are crunchy and
Yeah.
sandpaper
I know.
wiping
My
yourself.
son hates crunchy towels, so I don't have an option to not use fabric softener. I've just got to use something better.
Yeah.
And if you're a scented candle fanatic, well, the good news is you're going to start saving, 30 to $50 a pop on those big, super smelly ones.
Yeah.
And you can then invest in a really nice diffuser, some lovely essential oils, start having a think about what you like the smell of in that space, buy from a reputable 100% pure essential oil situation. You don't want to buy El Cheapo things.
That's right.
But they're
Facing the
gorgeous.
problem with the problem.
Yeah, exactly. They're really gorgeous. And then you still have a beautiful smelling home, but it's not poisoning you or the planet.
Yeah. I want to talk about endocrine disruptors in a little bit more detail for those who don't know what that is. Can you just break that down a little bit more and how that might be affecting us in our day-to-day living choices?
For sure. So endocrine disruption, also known as hormone disruption, is chemicals that have been found to either block or mimic natural hormone signaling. And that can be any type of hormone system in your body that's part of the endocrine system. So thyroid, sex hormones, adrenals, you name it.
So what we're seeing a lot of, and the very first episode of this podcast 3 years ago, I had Lynn Burmeister on the show. She's an IVF specialist and obstetrician. And she talked a lot about endocrine disruptors and how we're finding these chemicals in plastic water bottles. For example, she said, never, ever drink out of a plastic water bottle because it's absolutely filled with these chemicals that mimic our hormones. And she went on to talk about, the high level of infertility that's going on these days because of these things that have been put into our products, and our young girls who are developing much earlier than they probably would have if they're not using these. So what do we need to look at specifically for this? I mean, I'm definitely curious. I have two girls who are going into their teenage years, so I'm very curious as to how we can do our part to minimize that exposure to these chemicals. But where do we start to look here to help ourselves and our kids?
So the good news is we just talked about a big one, which is those synthetic fragrances.
Yeah.
It's massive what that does to reduce the amount of endocrine disruptive chemicals swimming around inside our body.
Yeah.
Another thing is really important is maintaining your weight, not letting your BMI go too high, and having a chat to your doctor or your health professional if you're finding it tricky to do that, because toxins store themselves in fat. And that's a protective mechanism, but of course that then perpetuates a feeding chain, which can then send your leptin sky high, which is a hormone that controls hunger, and then you eat more and then get more fat. So I think that's not talked about enough, that and that's not fat shaming. Like, I have been overweight from chronic illness and it's really tough. All I can say is get the support you need to not let your BMI go into an unhealthy range, and get it down if it is, because that will mean you aren't storing as many endocrine disruptive chemicals, and that will improve your health in so many different ways, of course, as well. Another thing that it can impact, unfortunately, is the formation of sexual organs, especially in baby boys. So by reducing our exposure to all these endocrine disruptive chemicals, especially in a preconception journey, then we can end up actually growing healthier baby boys with well-formed male genitals and organs. I mean, the mind boggles why this isn't on the front page news every week, but it is very clear and present in scientific literature that these have direct impact because of their ability to create confusion in the body, let alone in a growing body. You can imagine how much more confusion there is there. I remember a girlfriend said to me, how you've been going on about these hormone disruptors all this time. She had just moved to LA, and her little 6-year-old kid started having BO and breast buds. And she was like, I'm like, she shouldn't have BO yet. I can't figure it out. The only real major thing that they had changed is moving to American beef and dairy. And of course, we know in America, especially through the school canteen system, which doesn't always have the best quality ingredients, unless you're lucky enough to live in a county that prioritizes that, the hormones are being fed to the cattle. And so then you're drinking hormone-enriched cattle's milk. And she literally took her girl off the milk that they had at the canteen at lunchtime, and they stopped drinking milk at home. And the breast buds didn't develop, and she stopped having BO. This is how powerful it can be. So like, we're not messing around when we talk about this stuff. And that can be terrifying, because then you think, oh my God, have I done something to my kids? Please don't feel guilty. We've all come from this, especially if you've lived in a city and you haven't had that connection to the land. It can be so hard to know this stuff before someone finally tells you on a show like this. So
or
don't
you have
feel
your own
bad.
personal experience. But yeah, the guilt is there for all of us.
It's totally there. So it's a waste of an emotion when we've got lots of work to do and lots of inspiration to delve into on how to do things differently. And that for me has always kept me motivated. And I've always taught that way, which keeps people motivated.
And that brings, I mean, guilt and the fear also brings in the toxicity of mind too. So, you know, if you're healing body and then you're worrying and bringing more fear into your life, then your mind's becoming toxic. So, I mean, I know you talk about that a lot too, and the mindset around all of these changes. Can you touch on that a bit too?
Oh my gosh, Maritza, like the amount of times I've been to a barbecue with like health nut buddies, and they start freaking out that there's like no organic options at the buffet, or freaking out that their food group isn't represented, or that something's been like deep fried. And you just think, I've seen so many people get so stressed about not being able to achieve perfection or not being in control. And I think that is where we dive into some like, sometimes we really need to watch for that, because that's not mentally healthy. And when, like, for me, the best way I can describe how you do this in a healthy way is by embracing my philosophy of, you do what you do most of the time, so you can go with the flow some of the time.
Yeah.
The some of the time go with the flow part is the mental sanity, is the social integration while the system's still what it is. And it just helps you think, you know what? Our kids are having a great time. They all want an ice cream. I'm not going to prevent my kid from having an ice cream in this situation. I'll teach them like to go for the plain lemonade ice pole. That's like the least bad in or a Calippo type situation, rather than something with a whole ton of additives and things. But like, you've got to just go with the flow sometimes. Otherwise it becomes stressful, and then stress, you know, can have a negative impact on the body. Sometimes if you can approach stressful situations like, oh, I'm busy today and it's stressful, but I can't believe I get to do all this awesome stuff, that can actually be quite healthy and quite resilience building. But if you're stressed because you feel out of control, which if you're trying to be perfect, that tends to be more the case, that imprints on your nervous system. And then you can end up with a whole host of weird stuff when your nervous system gets involved. Everything from anxiety to twitching, ringing in the ears, like your nervous system gets too stressed and you can start to develop some really challenging chronic symptoms. So I like to try and keep people relaxed. Do what you can. When you know better, then you do another extra little thing. You know, the best one could do this week could be just to switch the kids' snacks out from a snack type thing to cheese and a plain bicky. Like, that could be the change this week. Celebrate it. Love it. You've made a massive change. Yeah. And, you know, next week it's the body lotion's run out. I'm going to find one with a natural or fragrance free instead of a synthetic fragrance. Yeah. The scented candles finally run out. You know what? I'm not going to replace it. I think we can, you know, get a nice beeswax candle maybe if we want the lighting for a dinner party. But we just don't need those fake smells in the house anymore, and just move slowly and move forward. That's all that matters.
Yeah. It's how do you go? I mean, we want when it comes to our children, obviously they grow up and they go and they're with grandparents or with their family members or with friends, and they're in these situations where they're exposed to new things, and you can't umbrella parent forever. It's almost like, what do you do in those situations? I suppose you can only educate your child to start making the choices that are right for them.
Totally. And hello teen years, I've got a boy about to turn 13. So I am very conscious of the fact that social groups then start to really pull them in directions that aren't ideal, certainly not for health, certainly not for sustainability. Often teenagers are very wasteful. It's all about the here and now. But I genuinely believe if you can bookend their day, Jude Lareau talks about bookends, with a really great brekkie and a really great dinner, pack a couple of decent snacks in the hope that they eat those as well. And that's all you can do. And then at lunch they have canteen or whatever, and there's a bit less control, but they're being like their friends. That's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And I think if you at least kind of say, okay, let's workshop what you do in a food court. We've got the Macca's option. There's the German pretzels. There's the chow time tea. There's the, all the things, because city kids are going to be exposed to all these things. What do we choose? Could a vegetarian sushi option, so where you don't know where the fish comes from and yada yada, could that be like a good stopgap? And you're still getting something from the food court. You're not being different to your friends. It's just that you like sushi while they eat their Macca's burger. And it's a bit better. So I think empowering our kids to work within the options that present themselves in the teen years. Like Seb said to me recently, so if I end up having to go to a McDonald's, Mum, can we look at the menu so I can know what I can have? Like, can we see? And we had a look, and like there's always the best of a bad situation. You can always find a meal even in a convenience store. There'll be a tin of tuna and some crackers or something. So there's always something you can do. And then whenever it's really, really not in your control, that's when you go with the flow. And it's genuinely, for a healthy person, like I would give different advice if you obviously had an anaphylactic child, if you had a child on the spectrum who was super sensitive to synthetic preservatives or gluten or dairy, for example, then of course you have to have a different conversation about what that looks like, and your level of control needs to be higher. And then there are a ton of people who don't have those considerations, generally otherwise doing fine. Things don't tend to pull them completely out of kilter if it's every now and then. And so every now and then becomes okay for me, I think, from a mental health and social acceptance perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like with the youth, and there always has been this way, there's an obsession with sugar still these days. And I know my kids are always wanting to bake a cake, or they're wanting to get a lolly packet and share it with their friends or whatever it is.
And I think if we support them and just watch for, like, is it sugar all the time? Because then maybe we need to look at adrenals. Maybe we need to look at gut microbiome. Maybe there's some balancing out that needs to be done. I know for my son, he had low cortisol recently on a blood test. I thought that was interesting. It's part of the profile of getting over mold illness, which we both had. And I had low cortisol as well. And I found during that time, I was like super drawn to carbohydrates and sweet things, because if you're not waking up with energy in the tank in the morning, then guess what you're going to be reaching for to try and like create the energy. It's going to be the easiest, lowest hanging fruit, pardon the pun, in the food world. And that's usually white carbs and sugar. So sometimes it's worth investigating as well. I will definitely say that, because there could be something, if they're like infatuated and don't have an off switch, there could actually be something to investigate.
Yeah. Tell me your take on tap water, because I'd love to know from your perspective if there's harm in having it all the time, sometimes boiling it first and then drinking it, the water to reduce toxins, if that even works.
Yeah, so unfortunately, tap water does have pesticide residue, herbicide residue, some chemicals. If you drink it straight away, it has a high level of chlorine. If you leave it for a while, chlorine tends to evaporate because it's a gas. But then you also have metal residues, and then you have fluoride. Now, half the world fluoridates water, the other half doesn't. Both have pretty strong reasons for why or why not. So it's very much still in scientific debate. My dentist, who's a holistic dentist and doesn't use topical fluoride in everyday cleaning and things like that, he says sometimes the use of topical fluoride is warranted for someone who's really battling tooth decay. But it is case by case, because often tooth decay is due to dietary issues. And so if you correct those, you can end up not being so susceptible to tooth decay. But he believes, and has shared many papers with me over the years, and I've interviewed, 4 different types of holistic dentists with PhDs and university medals, who have all said fluoride in the water just makes no sense. So for me, I get a filter that just gets everything out and then remineralizes to put all those good minerals that are in a natural spring back in the water. And that's where I've landed. So depending on where you land with the fluoride thing, that, you have water filters that can at least get rid of all the other stuff if you want to keep the fluoride in for whatever personal reasons you've decided and come to. So I think we have to have nuanced conversations and make room for everybody when something's not completely settled. So like, no one's good or bad. We don't know yet really for 100%, but we do know that fluoride is neurotoxic. And I do worry for babies, for example, especially formula-fed babies, and that's a very small person having the same adult dose of fluoride in the water as an adult. So, I think there's some really interesting things to look at there. So if you wanted to just get the chlorine and the pesticide and herbicide residues out and the metals, then you could even just get a really good quality water filter from your supermarket. No probs. For me personally, going that extra step, I really like the full water filtration and remineralization, and I use a brand called Waters Co. I can give you a link if you like, so that people can
let's
grab that.
put that onto the bottom of this. What about boiling water? There's that, I don't know if it's a fact or myth, whether boiling water can remove toxins. Have you ever explored that?
Yes. So if you are in a situation where there's a salmonella outbreak and tap water is your only option, then boiling water is going to be a really good idea to get rid of bacteria. 100%. It does nothing to remove anything else. Just doesn't. Okay. So good in a time of a contamination in the water that's bacterial or viral or fungal, but not effective to remove anything else.
So you're obviously cooking then with your filtered water as well?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. So that is obviously a lot for many people, unless you're getting the system that you're getting. And I don't know, is it attached to your water system at home? Or?
No, at the moment, we're in quite a small apartment and we just have a couple of jugs.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, really easy.
So
but you can get big benchtop ones. You can get ones that fit under your kitchen sink so that it's the tap that's going. Yep. You can get whole house water filtration. There's so many different options.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we do have options, which is great to know. I wanted to touch on one other thing that you mentioned, and it's because it's around me at the moment. Living in Queensland, there's mold everywhere, and we've had so much humidity. Yes. And I know you've gone through your own mold illness and explored that in depth. But I'd love to just touch on that a little bit, and how mold actually affects us and our health, and maybe steps or things to look out for where mold could be present that we are potentially not aware of.
So do you have 3 hours?
Well, I've got about
5 minutes. No. Yeah. So I'm going to give you the long and short of it is if you live on the east coast of most countries, it is more humid by definition, and you need dehumidifiers. There's no shortcut. You will continually battle mold, even if you don't have a single leak in your walls, you don't have a roof leaking, just the indoor air humidity that comes from those summer months or the wetter months in the winter. Like we have quite a wet June usually in Sydney. You need a dehumidifier. And if you've got a big house, you probably need a couple upstairs and a big one downstairs. They are worth their weight in gold, dehumidifiers, because they just pull all of that moisture out. You have some split system air conditioning units that are, have a dry setting. So it's about having a look if you've got one of those to see if that's possible. But I'm a big fan of dehumidifiers. I chuck one in the wardrobes every now and then just to dry everything out. We actually live in a really dry apartment, so it's not a big issue for us, but I've lived in places where you can pull, like if you've got two 35-litre units going, they'll be full at the end of the day and you've taken 70 litres of water out of your indoor air.
Amazing, isn't it?
And that in itself is going to mean I stop getting DMs of people asking me how to clean mold off stuff. Like, it's crazy because you can't kill mold. That's dangerous. You have to try and remove it. So if you can get it off a surface and dry it out in the sun, that's your best bet. And you can use, like, a lot of people get condensation on their windows. And so, you don't want to spray exit mold or stuff like that. That's actually food source for mold spores and creates more virulent fungi, kind of like antibiotic resistance, same sort of concept. So those are not the things to use. Just some hot soapy water, remove it and get rid of the kitchen paper towel that you used to take that off, and then start using dehumidifiers. The mold won't be able to grow back and you won't get any more condensation on your windows. And then if you've got like a big family, I don't care how good your extractor fan in your bathroom is, it's not going to be good enough. So chuck your dehumidifier on after all the showers in the morning or the evening. Just put it on for a couple of hours and it'll just dry everything out. And then you're not going to have mold in the grout, mold in the shower, just all that cleaning. And it's not good for your health. It's not just annoying to look at, it's bad for your health.
Yeah.
So the idea is that we create a condition in the home where it doesn't grow in the first place. Where you have to worry is if it's coming through the walls or you're getting staining, bubbling, peeling paint. Those are all signs that there's something bigger at play with your waterproofing or with your roof.
When you had a mold illness, what symptoms were you presenting with?
A laundry list, crazy. It was everything from heart palpitations, ectopic beats, skipped beats, ringing in the ear, crawling, tingling skin, vibrations, muscle spasms, organ spasms. Can't even describe what that feels like.
So you're almost falling apart, it felt like.
Unbelievable. It was absolutely crazy. Pain in the joints, pain in the muscles. Honestly thought I was headed for a wheelchair or death at one point. It was that bad. It was awful.
And no one could pick it up, right?
No one. No one could tell anything. And the nervous system is very involved in environmental toxin poisoning, which mold illness is. And not everyone is super susceptible. I have, after having spoken to many health professionals, both in the energetic space and the physical space on this over the last decade, it seems that any kind of infection will take a weak host. And if I think about the water damage building we were living in, I was weak in the sense that I was working so hard that couple of years prior to getting really, really sick. And I was not taking care of myself, not prioritizing myself, certainly not getting enough sleep. And then you mix in with that an operation that I needed to have, and the general anesthetic is really the moment that everything started to go totally crazy for me. So I think we have to, wouldn't it be great if humans could start being people who don't wait for the shit to hit the fan big time before we go, oh, yeah, like maybe there were quite a few things at play there. We love finding the one big baddie, finding the pill, fixing it, and then moving on as if nothing ever happened and not changing anything about ourselves. But for me, it's been a huge lesson in patience, self-preservation, guarding my time more preciously, and also then knowing key environmental toxins that can inflame a system and really send it into overdrive and create real chronic illness. So it's been a huge lesson, an amazing opportunity to help a whole bunch of people who just cannot figure out what's wrong with them, because you find a whole bunch of illnesses are kind of similar. And it's usually when the body is so stressed, then by a toxin of some kind, whether it's a tick bite, whether it's mold, whether it's EMFs, you name it, anything environmental like that. And then the nervous system is literally just trying to keep you safe, but freaking out at the same time. And it's traumatic. So then you learn about trauma and how to heal that. And it's just been a fascinating journey. So awful, but really amazing as well, bizarrely.
Well, you have an amazing wealth of knowledge, and we could literally sit here and pick
I know
that many amazing topics that you're helping so many people along in this journey that you've been through. And even someone listening to that today who might be experiencing these symptoms and at their wits' end and not having any idea where to turn, go out and research if it's something that you think that could help you on your pathway to better health. So thank you so much. I do ask this question to everyone who comes on the show. So what is something that you have heard in your life? It's based on the topic, on the title of this podcast, Things You Can't Unhear. But what is something that you have heard in your life that you heard and you could not unhear that forced you to make positive changes in your life?
I think the very first one was that they used petroleum to make food colors. And not many people do anymore, I will say that. Still just the really cheap, nasty stuff does. But I remember being 28 and thinking, oh my gosh, like I've always bought all those fun food colors to make like fun different icings on birthday cakes and things over the years. And it was one of my first big ahas that, like, if they're using that and no one's questioning that, what else are they using that no one's questioning? And I couldn't unthink about it, right? I just couldn't. I then had to know what's in our food. And then that became, I just had to know what's in my moisturizer. I just had to know what's in this scented candle, on and on you go. So I think when you find out someone's allowed to do something toxic to your food or your personal care or cleaning supply, something so intimate and connected to us, it just makes you think, well, what else don't I know? And it was like oh my gosh, I went to a really good school, an amazing university. All that time, 17 years of formal education, never once did I ask myself, or did anyone teach me that what I put in my body, what I put on my body, and what I surrounded myself with in my home impacted my health or the planet. Like, is that not a massive failing of our education system? Just crazy. So that was my big can't unhear it moment.
I'm going to let that land for a minute, because that's so bloody powerful, and asking ourselves these questions, and the fact that it can be infuriating that people are still allowed, these big companies are still allowed to put this stuff in our products and still market it as being great for you and good for you and healthy for you. And it can get infuriating when you really hone in on that side of things too. But I suppose you're focusing on the positives like you always do. You're doing what's best for you and the people around you, and educating as many people as you can. And now you've got the course with Benefit Pocket coming up. So if anyone wants to actually jump on and learn more about this in a really concise way, I suppose that's the best way forward at the moment, hey?
It is. It's such a good starting point. We cover so many things. It's all quite video based, but I've got downloads for everybody for like little fact sheet and remembering to swap this for that. And we have a 40% off code for people who are listening. So that's Low Tox 40. And the way that you join the Be Low Tox course is you download the Benefit Pocket app, or you can jump on to Benefit Pocket, the website. Very easy to find all of that. Yeah. And once you're in, you can then purchase it, enter your code, get your 40% off. We kick off Thursday, 7th of April, which is just around the corner. Yep. And I've even got a live webinar. We have Q&A that you can ask questions throughout the course that one of me or my Low Tox coaches answers. So it's super, super empowering, and it's not so big that you'll think, oh my gosh, there's so many places I could go with this. It is really easy, bite size. Okay, I'm going to watch just module 1. I'm just going to watch the first lesson, and that's all I have to do this month. Even if you can't follow the course live, you'll get it for a couple of months access. So don't panic, and then bring questions to that live webinar so I can directly answer you. I think it's such a powerful, simple course. And it's really, I was looking at it and chatting to the collaborators with Benefit Pocket who helped create it, of course, and thinking, wow, it's like my best of greatest hits. It's like you got all the absolute top things that I've ever really honed in on being important, and they're in that course.
Knowledge is power. So
I'm
definitely going to be buying your cookbook, actually, your recipe book.
Oh, yay. Enjoy.
Yep, because I need to start some new, foundations here and just jump back straight into that on a bigger level. So I'm looking forward to that. So you've got a podcast, you've got books, you've got courses. People have no excuse now to dig more into this and have that knowledge at their fingertips. So thank you so much, Alexx, for your time today. Always a wealth of knowledge when you're sharing your expertise and your experiences. And I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me, Maritza.
Thanks for listening to the show. What did you think? And what did you feel? Let us know by leaving me a message on the Things You Can't Unhear Instagram community page. And if you can, give us some ratings love on your favourite listening platform.